the reason I love being a part of coffee industry is that you have so many different people from different backgrounds that quit their jobs they were doing before, and they opened like espresso bars. They started to roast, and they used to be lawyers, people working in finance and in tech and education, and they bring these different perspectives and these experiences to coffee.
Welcome back to Coffee with April. My name is Patrick Rolfe, and this is a conversation with some amazing professionals and entrepreneurs in the coffee industry, sharing their perspective and experience. It's about integrity, quality, and the future. For this episode, we sat down with Michal, the founder of the Standart Magazine, one of the most read coffee magazines in the industry, and they're quickly rising to become one of the most relevant media companies around. I've always been very interested in their startup process, and I had the pleasure of sitting down with Michal during the VOC in Amsterdam earlier this year. Unfortunately, there is a bit of background noise on this one, but overall it's a great conversation, and I really hope you enjoy it. So we are sitting in Amsterdam, apartment somewhere down south. I'm not sure exactly where. I'm sitting with Michal, founder of Standart, a magazine that I'm sure that all of you have read, seen in some capacity. This is going to be a really interesting one because it's the first time we're not necessarily focusing on coffee, right?
Good.
Which you are to some extent because that's what you do, but you're not roasting coffee and you're not running coffee shops, right?
Yeah, and I have zero coffee experience.
Exactly, which is really interesting. And we're going to go through all of this, get back to this as well. But we're going to start to talk about something that we already talked about on the bus ride here to the apartment. And so we're at the World of Coffee. That's kind of important as well. Yep. That's why we're in Amsterdam.
Happening right now.
Yeah, and we just launched this podcast right before so that all of you could listen to it before you got here, which has been really cool. And so part of what have happened here, at least for me personally in Amsterdam, is the fact that walking around, a lot of you have come up to me and said, wow, what an amazing podcast. I really like your new product. It looks so cool. And then I asked them, so which episode do you like? And they're like, no, I actually haven't listened to it. And I get confused. I get really confused. And I know you've been having a similar experience with launching a magazine that is, to be fair, ridiculously beautiful. So you should get credit for the fact that it looks beautiful. But to some extent start also from a journalistic perspective here, coffee industry and how important and relevant is content. Yep. Do people care about content in this industry? You have a magazine that is focused on some amazing content. Yep. Still, you had that same experience with people looking at the cover, being really happy with it, but not necessarily opening up and reading it.
Yeah, I know exactly the feeling you're describing, and we had this from the day one when we started. And it started with the first images we were posting on Instagram when the first issue came, and I realized that there's a certain recipe for the most successful Instagram post, and that's when you put the magazine on a wooden table with a little flower next to it, with a nice cappuccino with a beautiful latte art, and you have a nice girl reading the magazine with red polished nails on the wooden table, and you just snap it from above.
Right from above, yeah, sure. Classic.
That's it. That's the recipe. It's a very superficial, very Instagrammy, very millennial, and this fact that people tend to give too much credit to beauty. I think it's natural because today you have so many things to look at. We are at the World of Coffee and so many different roasters, so many different machines, so much distraction. So the aesthetically pleasant things capture your attention very quickly. But there always has to be a balance between the aesthetic part and the meaningful part of the content of what you do, whether it's coffee or a magazine.
Sure.
But it happened to me quite a few times that people came that, wow, this is a beautiful magazine, and that's always nice to hear. But when you ask them, like, so, like, did you get any value from it? Like, did you read something that changed the way you think, the way you work? Did you learn anything? Oh yeah, I actually I have plans to read it on my plane back home, and or I'm planning to buy the issue when I get home. But I just want to tell you it's beautiful. So yeah, it's nice to hear, but I get what you're saying.
How does that make you feel? Because I mean, when I started April, that was right in the kind of everyone was gunning for the best looking packaging, because that's what's kind of, that's what we did in the roastery world at that point.
Yeah.
And I was so frustrated, so we took a white bag and we printed the beauties on the inside. Kind of like, end of story. We're not focusing on this shit. We care about the content.
Yeah.
Which is, it's not completely true, because as you say, there's a relevance in how things look. But how important had that been for you, and how frustrating is it that people, is it even frustrating that people sometimes value the visual aspect of the magazine more than the actual content?
Yeah, it is. It might have been frustrating at some point in the past, but it's not frustrating anymore, because I have more of a marketing and business background, and I can look at things from like different perspectives, and I can understand this, that we, like, both of us, we often do this even when we don't think about it. Like, we judge things based on the aesthetics even when we don't realize it. And sometimes, or many times, happens that when something is beautiful, it attracts the attention, and you have a certain conversion rates that from those people that got attracted by the beauty of something will become loyal customers and realize that there is the content of what you do is actually meaningful.
That can come later, yeah. Sure.
It's a funnel, so it's a conversion rate, but
Yeah.
like basic business, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting. It's an interesting concept, and to be fair, I'm also sometimes in situations where you wish the content would look better, right? Because as you say, that is kind of what would caught your attention as well. But what kind of came first with Standart, with the magazine? Was the idea first to make something really pretty, or was the content the most important part, or?
It was the fact I imagined at the moment when I got the idea, and I realized that I miss a publication that's executed and done on a specialty level in the specialty coffee industry, like from the production point of view, like in the quality of writing, the quality of the aesthetics, the quality of the production itself.
Yeah.
And when I compared to publications I was often reading, to the quality of shops and roasters and espresso bars and everything, I just missed it. So I always had this idea of creating a perfect balance of quality content, same as you have like quality coffee in your shop, and content that's based on not just the geeky stuff that's just for like the elitist part of the coffee industry, and like just for the people that are clapping on their shoulders and like, oh yeah, we all understand this and look how pretty we are, and with images of wealthy white privileged tattooed kids brewing coffee with sun in the back and the steam and all that. So I wanted like to put together the content that basically brings the atmosphere of a coffee shop to print. So the same as when you walk into your favorite coffee shop, you have the machine, you have the barista, you have the conversations happening over a cup of coffee between the guests. You have some art on the wall. You also have toilets. You also have the waste somewhere in the back of the behind the bar. So I wanted to like connect these elements, like the art on the wall, the machine, like the tech things, the stories of baristas, of people standing behind the bar, the conversations happening over coffee that are not necessarily about coffee, like they never are, and like to somehow bring all of this on paper. So that was the idea behind the content.
Yeah. Did you have inspiration from elsewhere then, if you couldn't find it in in coffee? Like, do you have any kind of magazine now, which is like, yeah, that's the reference. That's what I'm going for.
Yeah, there's a quite a few of them. Probably the biggest inspiration is a magazine called Offscreen.
Yeah.
Do you know that?
Yeah.
So the idea of the magazine is to portray people behind pixels, and so like to bring the stories of people that work mainly in the online world and in digital media or like programming or graphic design, and to like the guy who started the magazine, Kai. We don't know each other in person, like just through emails, but he makes all the interviews himself, like which are the main part of the content. And he often like spends time outside in the park with the people and taking pictures and recording really interesting interviews. So that kind of magazine was one of our biggest inspiration, like from the business point of view, from like design point of view. Like it's really well done. And there was a bunch of others, like from mainly architecture, design.
Sure.
So
You said in the beginning here that you're not a coffee guy, right? You have no background in coffee whatsoever. No. So the question here is, how does a person with no background in coffee get the idea to start a coffee magazine?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been a barista. I've never done any courses, so I just made you a drip bag coffee that's I would bet it's pretty shitty.
We should talk. No, we should talk about that. What is as a Glitch coffee roasters from Japan, which are really cool roastery. It's actually pretty good though.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason why it says it might be pretty shitty is that we didn't have any scales or any fancy stuff. We boiled some water in an apartment in Amsterdam and poured it on the coffee, right? Yeah. But it's surprisingly good.
In the middle of the brewing process, I realized that I don't have any recipes, so I just put the right amount of water.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. So I've never done any courses. I've never worked in a coffee shop. I like to go to coffee shops just because they became this third place between your home and your school. So I often just hang around with friends. And I realized that coffee can actually have a taste, which was surprising. But wow, it can taste flavors.
Was that in any special coffee shop, or was that just a random experience?
It was one very special coffee shop. It was in Prague.
Sure.
There's a roastery double shot. They have a number of places, and they have a beautiful Kies van der Westen. It's one of the first shops in Central Europe. It was I've never seen the kind of machine before, and I got this very thick body espresso, and I really remember the second I just put it to my mouth, holy shit, what's that?
Yeah.
So that was the moment that told me that I'm in.
As in coffee then, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But then was your version of in coffee always you making a magazine, or could have that been something else?
Well, I wanted to become a part of the industry somehow, and I wanted to contribute to it in a way, and I didn't want to open up another coffee shop, or I didn't want to open up a roastery because I'm not a roaster. And so at that time I was studying, and with my girlfriend and with a bunch of friends, we were organizing TEDx conferences in Slovakia. So I was 17, 18, paying all the bills and doing the fundraising and meeting people directors of Google in our country, and scientists, and really super interesting mix of people. And at all of our events, I always invited friends that were doing specialty coffee in Slovakia as a coffee catering, and I liked to do events, so I realized that there are no solid coffee festivals or coffee events in Slovakia. So we did the first coffee festival in Slovakia, and some small workshops and discussions and yada yada yada. And so that's how it started. And then another thought came to my mind that this is all great, doing these events and meetings, because you you get to meet a lot of interesting people, but the only thing that you have after the event is done is the invoices you have to pay, but all you have the reviews, you have the photographs and all that,
Sure.
but you can't touch it, you can't feel it. You have the memories, great, but I just didn't feel that I'm like just doing something real. So and yeah, at that point I was reading a lot of like solid, good, well done print magazines like the New Yorker and others like Offscreen. And so I just started to play with the thought of creating like this kind of a print in specialty coffee.
Oh, amazing! And how has when did it actually start?
So it's 3 years ago. It's 3 years ago and something. Yeah.
Amazing. And how was that process? Both as you know, what was that your first magazine you ever was a part of creating?
Yes.
And no background
No.
educational either. Okay, so
No.
that's amazing. You move into coffee without any kind of background in coffee, and then you want to write a magazine about stuff about coffee without any experience of writing a magazine as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So how what's the first step then? Like how do you actually pull this off?
So the best thing about this that you got no experiences in coffee and publishing is that you have no boundaries in your mind. Like you don't know what like this is how you should do it, or like this is how others do it. You have no idea, and you don't even have a lot of resources to spend, so you have to improvise and you have to bootstrap. So when we started to do that with my girlfriend, she was studying industrial design, which is not graphic design, something completely different to what she's doing now. But we just started to play with softwares and sorting things on our own. And yeah, it was very organic process. I like for the first issue, I just reached out to a few friends that I knew in the country, asking them that, hey, would you be willing to like write something or take some pictures or illustrate something? All of them were happy to help, and I'm super thankful for. So we just somehow put together the first issue. We get the money to print first 1,000 copies. When we sold 1,000 copies, we printed 1,500 copies. When we sold 1,500 copies, well, very like super like simple and organic way, and we got a sponsor for the first issue, which was Chemex.
Oh yeah, cool.
And that was to me personally like one of the most important moments of my life when I finished the Skype with Adams, the director.
How not to interrupt, but how in the world do you convince Chemex, so American-based company, to give you money for this? Like, what is the pitch? Like, hi, I'm gonna do this magazine about something I never worked with and I never did a magazine, but I want you to give me money.
Yeah.
How was that? Like, how do you pitch that?
It's a tricky one.
Yeah.
So I got introduced to them through a friend of mine, and we got this Skype call that took 2 hours, and to Adams he needed to run because the paper filter machine got broken and he needed to fix everything, and it was a really cool conversation. And I was just throwing around the ideas that this is the vision, this is what we want to do, this is how we start. Like the first issue is coming out in a couple of weeks, in a couple of months. And then I described them the fact that we are not putting a lot of advertisements inside. We don't like put like huge and bad brands that we don't like and use ourselves. It's just a very like curated approach to brand collaborations. So I was describing this whole philosophy for ages, and then I told him that as the exclusive sponsor, they get the feature inside as a like about Chemex, about a history, design, whatever they want. So if they pay for the sponsorship, they get the feature inside. But at that moment, we already had that feature written and all the shots taken.
Oh wow, yeah.
So I told them that like, well, if you become the sponsor, you'll pay the money and you'll get the feature. And if you will not, we'll print the same feature anyway.
We're gonna do it
because
anyway. Yeah, sure.
we already made it for you, and it's already done. You just need to sign the paper. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, we haven't advertised in the last 18 years because, you know, we're Chemex and we don't need to advertise anywhere because everyone knows us already. But yeah, we're happy to be a part of it. And that was the moment when I was like, whoa, they don't need this at all. Like, why would they do it? And it was a good push, like, for the company itself, because it was like a small amount of money we were able to cover like some costs. But the best part was the psychological push that if these guys trust into what we do, it's probably not such a stupid idea. Sure. So yeah, that was a very important meeting to me.
That sounds absolutely amazing. Okay, so you launched the first. That goes well. You buy more, you sell more. On the kind of subject of, you know, learning, making it better. I've read most of them. I think I read all of them. There's a huge difference from number one and the current issue, right? How has that kind of process been, and what are you? What do you want it to be? What do you want Standart as a magazine to be?
Yeah, it's you're right. Like it changed a lot from the day one. At the very beginning, I got this very how do you describe that, this feeling that you're the founder, so you have to do everything and you know the best, like all the processes, you know that feeling. But then I realized that if we want to do a truly international publication for like the US market or the UK market, I can't write the pieces. I can't be the only editor in the team because I'm not native and I can't write. I'm even though like we are going to print in a few days and not even my editor's letter is finished. Like it's I'm so bad at this. So I knew that we have to change this rapidly, and have someone in the team who's capable of pushing this to another level. So we have this like totally random meeting with this guy, Luke Adams in London. He's Australian, but he's been living in Oxford for a while, and he basically told me that what you do, the magazine, the publication is great for what it is, but it can be much better. Like I can also see the potential, but from the language perspective, someone should help you, and if you need any help, I'm happy to help. And he's a super smart person, highly intelligent. He studied Victorian literature at Oxford, so if he wants to, he can speak the way that I have no idea what he's talking about.
Sure.
So he took over all the relationships with writers and like content production. So we got to work with a lot of people that write for New York Times and The Atlantic, or like academics and scientists. But the idea of like having the content mixed between things things aimed for coffee geeks and professionals and homebrewers and enthusiasts, like this idea of this perfect balance is still there. Sometimes we can get a little too philosophical, sometimes not, but we always try to keep the balance.
Yeah. Which must be a difficult thing to do as well, right?
Oh yeah.
I'm always been curious, and this kind of dates back to something that James Hoffman said on this podcast as well, whereas he's been blogging for like several years. And he basically told me like, yeah, no, it's all video now. No one reads anymore. How is that kind of, it's first of all, from your perspective, is that true? Doesn't people read anymore? And how is that kind of affecting the future of Standart as a company, as a magazine? You guys are launching a new website as well, and I assume there's a few new features that comes with that as well.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like first of all, reading itself as an activity, it's not natural like for mankind, because it's just a thing of the last couple centuries, but it's when you look at like thousands, like tens of thousands years back, it's not natural for like a Homo sapiens to read things on paper. But I still believe that especially stories written on paper, put together in a format that's like digestible and it just it has a certain charm when you're sitting in a room where with all your electronic devices turned off, just with your lamp and with a cup of coffee, and with something you feel in your hands, and you read a story of someone on the other side of the world. Like when I have these moments, I can feel like a very strong connection with that story and with that moment I'm in right now. And especially today when all things go digital and you get notifications the whole time, you get the Instagram likes, you get the hearts, you get the messages, mom is calling you, it's like all the time something's happening in your phone, in your computer, and I just can't pay any attention anymore. And even I'm a big fan of videos, and I'm a huge fan of vloggers and doing vlogging. I often finish after 1 or 2 minutes because like I got an email, it was in the middle of the day, I realized I have to do something else. So yeah, but when I read a book or when I read a magazine, like those are really the moments where I can truly just turn off for a while, and it's something that will last to me and like hopefully to some other people in the future.
On the same kind of note, and I know we talked about this again on the way here, but I'm fascinated often when, from the perspective of starting a company or starting a business or starting any kind of thing, really, how much of Standart, because I believe there needs to be a balance, how much of this is for you versus for someone else in order to make money, right? You always end up in a situation where there's a balance here, right? Whereas you as a founder has a passion and interest, a willingness to do something, versus you also need to pay bills, and to some extent you need to meet in the middle to kind of find a ground where you can follow your passion, but you can also pay your bills, right?
Yep.
And on that same kind of subject of, let's say people would stop to read, would you still continue to push this because you believe that that's important, and there's still people in the world that would want to read even if it wouldn't be enough to sustain in that sense?
I would say that like if I get a question like what I am as a person passionate about is not making independent print coffee magazines. I really like strategic thinking, business, marketing. I like doing projects. I like joining projects and working with different people, building teams, and figuring out problems. So if suddenly we stopped having readers and we would need to switch like the direction, we would need to pivot.
Yeah.
We could do so very easily because, at least I hope so, because one of my ideas of like how to build a strong core team is to surround yourself with people, just with the A players, of course, but with highly intelligent and flexible people that's if you tell them like on Monday morning that, hey guys, like we have this or that problem, or we have this or that idea and we want to switch the direction like from specialty coffee to, I don't know, cocktails, or we want to do this project. I wanted to build a team that when I tell them that there is a huge change in direction, I'm able to like take them with me and do anything I want, and anything we want to do together, and they can switch like from hour to hour and be like, yeah, let's do it. So even if such a situation will occur and we have a lot of projects piled up that we want to do in the near future, I'll be totally okay to do that.
Oh, amazing. I think there's very few people that would sit here or in any conversation and probably say that. But I think it's also really
I often end up in discussions about this where there's a big difference between what you need to do and what you want to do.
Yep.
Right? And a lot of people starting a company, they are locked into the idea that I need to do this because I need to have this company. And to be able to have this company, I need to do the following things, right? Which is always wrong. Always wrong, because you don't need this company, right? The company should be there because you want to have it, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many people that goes down that kind of path or road, ending up doing things they don't want to do, because they think they need to do it, right? So it's extremely liberating to hear that someone is actually like, no, like we can do something else, right? Because you can. And I think there's a strength in being flexible as a company, and I think that most companies aren't, and that's today why most companies within this industry, within coffee, is failing as well. Sadly, but true. How do you, from the business side of this, like, give us an insight. Like, how does the kind of infrastructure of Standart look like? How many people are you guys? How many different languages? Like, you guys are, it's growing, right? It's getting bigger.
It is like the team is still fairly small, and I'm still far away from having the core team of us being perfect. But like today there is 7 of us. We live in I think 6 different countries, and 5-6 different time zones. So it's all like fully remote. So we don't like, we just look at each other from behind a screen. We got to meet together like once or twice when we travel somewhere, like we spend a week in the woods, or we go to we went to Brooklyn. We rented a place, and we spent some time just brainstorming and
the whole team. So also
But when we travel to World of Coffee or similar events, well, there was always like 2 of us or 3 of us that we can get together. So yeah, the infrastructure, it's spread out. We outsource a lot of things. We have warehouses in Berlin, Tokyo, and in Moscow. So we have different fulfillment companies that we work with. We have 3 different printers in Hong Kong, Moscow, and Central Europe. And we have a team of around 85 different writers and artists and photographers that we work like on an ad hoc basis. So with some of them we work with regularly with every issue, with some of them just once or twice a year. And yeah, I'm a big fan of keeping things like as lean and as small as possible without, like, we don't have any investors. I don't have any like financially interested partners in the company, so we can't afford to hire like 10 people for marketing or advertising or content, even though it would like help a lot, but we're doing like one thing at a time. So but you know that feeling very well.
Sure.
So
is that frustrating?
What do you mean?
No, as in to some extent it doesn't have to, because it's a choice, but as you say, like there's continuously, when you start something, it's the reality of where you are now and the reality of where you wanted to be or where you want to be, right? Yeah. Sometimes that takes time, especially as you say, okay, maybe you want to do this really cool new feature, and you need a staff of 5 extra to work full time on that to be able to do that, but you can't do that, right? Or you're forced to do content or concepts that you feel could have been better. They're still really good, but they could have been better. But right now we just can't afford to do that extra little thing.
Yeah, I guess you always need to have, like, to some extent, this feeling, because once you come to a stage that you're happy and satisfied with all you do, and you don't see any way that how we could improve, like in that moment, like you're done. Yeah. So you always have to be like a little unhappy with the outcome, and always try to improve, even when the other side, when the reader or the partner or the customer, they don't see the bag, like they don't see the infrastructure, they don't see the things in the bag, and they're happy. So we always just have to keep improving. But yeah, it's I think the word, I recently read a really interesting piece on expectations. How expectations can destroy a lot of marriages and relationships.
Sure.
That you expect that in 5 years you'll be doing this or that, or you expect that when you go to World of Coffee in Amsterdam, you meet like these 6 super interesting people, you fixed 8 different deals, or you go to all the parties and whatever. You have these expectations that come naturally. You don't think about them, you just somehow have them. And when the moment comes and the expectation does not equal the reality, you end up unhappy.
Sure.
And in marriages and relationships, well, like, I don't have any experiences to talk about, but I guess it's very similar that you're at work, it's Friday afternoon, like you expect that your partner is at home making you dinner and welcoming you. But in the meantime, your partner is stuck with your kids at a school because of another problem. You get home tired, it's 10 p.m., you're hungry, there is no one there, the freezer is empty, and like the expectations that are made the reality, you end up unhappy.
Yeah.
You get into a fight when your partner gets home. So this often happens in business, that you have these expectations. So I try to like limit all these expectations to zero and to focus on processes and the
Sure.
work itself. And like I don't think about like what will be the goal and what will be the outcome. I'll just focus on the closest thing I have
What's in
in
front of you?
and
Sure.
I'll just do it and we'll see what comes.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm not sure if I even answered your question.
I think that's the perfect answer, and I think it's especially now since World of Coffee in Amsterdam, that means World Bursa Championships, which means a bunch of people, 56 I think this year competing, at least 55 of them being in that exact same situation. You have a bunch of expectations, and some people they go into that competition being, okay, I want to win. I want to win the World Championships, but I'd expect that would take me 5-6 years. So if you go in and you don't win this year, that's okay.
Mhm.
You learn something. You move on. Some people go in and say, I want to win the World Championship, I want to do it now. And you don't win, right? That will crush you.
Yeah.
There's several other people competing this year that will never ever enter a barista competition again.
Yeah.
Because it will crush them so hard that they couldn't live up to those expectations, right? And it's very, very important, I think, as you say, to actually, you need to be very mindful of where you put that. I think about that a lot as well as in running a company, because there's really no reason to have them because you don't know. Because whenever you run a company, do a product, there's a million factors you can never control. There's so many external pieces of what we do on a day-to-day basis that for you to rely on expectations, which very often can lead to also excuses, right? Because I expect this to happen 5 years from now, so I don't really need to deal with whatever it is today, because at 5 years, I will have another. It's a classic. You're out of school. I don't really need to do anything now because that's all gonna be fine when I'm 30 or whatever. And then you wake up, you're 30, and then you're fucked because you weren't living up to the expectations you have. On the subject of expectation, and I'm not even sure if this is relevant, but let's go down this road anyway. External expectations, as in like friends, family, colleagues, industry, looking at what you do, expecting stuff from you, both personally and as a company. Is that something you think about? Is that something you relate to, or is it something you just completely disregard and you don't think about it?
Yeah, I try to like not think about it at all. It's difficult with social media that when you post images from you traveling somewhere, like when your friends that you're not with on daily basis, when they see that, oh wow, you're in Korea, now you're in Japan, you have to be so successful, and this asshole, like, he's doing so well. Even if it's not true at all, it just the perception of what you're doing can often be misleading to these people, and then they tend to expect things that could not be possible. I yeah, I would love to turn out from social media completely if I could, but it's just such a strong part of the marketing strategy and the daily business that I just simply
Yeah.
can't. But yeah, like I guess you have these classic European expectations from the family that's, well, you're like at this age you start university, at this age you finish university, at this age you get a house, you get a partner, you get kids, and so on. It was difficult, like, for me to explain my grandmother what I actually do.
Yeah, sure.
She was like every couple of weeks she was asking me that. So, like, this book, like, why are you doing this book for the seventh time? Like, didn't the people already buy it?
Yeah.
Like, well, it's a periodical. Like, it comes out as a magazine, so it's always different. Ah, so you're doing the book again, right? Yes, it's so it was hard to explain, and the expectations of what I will be doing were a little different, but yeah.
Mm. You have to be fair, you're saying that you're focusing very much on the moment and where you are now, but do you have a kind of grand vision of what Standard will become? Do you have like, even if for a few seconds now, if you would reflect on, okay, so 5 years from now or 10 years from now, not as in a plan, but Standard as a project, I want it to become this. Do you have a plan, or is that also a completely organic process?
I do. It's probably not related to like just to Standard as a print publication, because I like right now I'm in a stage that at events like World of Coffee or other coffee conferences I can get bored quite easily, because I can see a lot of improvement, but then not a lot of innovation. And when I was like dealing with the tech and education speakers at TEDx, I got to meet a lot of people from all these different exciting industries. And now it's like talking to 25 different roasters a day, and everyone is showing you like this new Burundi and this new Kenyan or this new expensive geisha. And those are all great coffees, but well, of course I expect them to be great.
Yeah.
Because I pay for them as a customer, but I just get bored with these conversations quite easily. So I was always I kept thinking that if there was a way where we could push what we do, so it brings like more value to the industry, and it's more exciting and bigger. And I do have a lot of plans for the near future. I don't want to talk about things too soon, because it's
Sure.
it sounds as I'm just talking too much and all talk no action. But I do have some visions of doing something that will connect people from the whole hospitality business, not just specialty coffee, and to do something that will solve a few more problems than it's just education or learning. So yeah, we'll see.
That's a very cryptic answer, but we're looking forward to
I
see
know.
what that will be in the future, right?
Me too.
I can respect that.
Yeah.
On the kind of subject of things that are not a magazine, you are the representative for SEA in Slovakia. I was just at your festival,
Yeah,
basically,
true.
which was very kind of you to invite me. It was a great time.
Thanks for coming. Yeah, that's good.
So, and you have also, that was that third year you had an event? Second.
So I was doing the coffee festivals for the last 4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years. Yeah.
But it's the first year I'm in the structure. I was elected for the events coordinator for SCA.
Yeah. And what is the Coffee Fest for those of you that, or for the people that don't know, and why did you start?
Yeah, so we called it like Standard Coffee Festival, and it was basically a small casual get together of people that we were friends with. We wanted to get to know in person with our subscribers, with our customers, with our readers. We wanted to bring interesting content and to drink coffee and listen to like to people that shape the industry, connect that with like inspirational space and with cocktails, because it's the conversations can get interesting very quickly when you drink gin tonics. So the idea was always to do a small event that's curated. It's not an exhibition. You don't have people waiting in lines for like to get a sample of coffee. So we did this like all inclusive ticket that like you pay for a ticket, you get a wristband, and you drink as much coffee as you want. You go to as many cuppings as you want. You go to all the lectures and workshops, or like everything you want to do there. And we did like we combined it for the first time with the national competition for SCA, which was a interesting experience. Not easy, but good fun. Yeah.
It's never easy. It's never. There's always so many things.
Yeah.
Especially when you deal with competitors, I would say.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. On the subject, I'm curious because, as you already said as well, you're traveling a lot, right? So, at least from what I see, I'm very curious to hear your perspective on the industry. Like you already referenced that during these events, there's a lack of innovation. To some extent, I would agree personally that this is probably the least inspiring industry in the world at the moment. And I have never ever been inspired by anything in coffee, which sounds hard. I've been inspired by people in coffee. All of them are on this podcast.
Yeah.
But we're extremely bad at innovation. I think that's a very good way to put it. What do you see? Like, is this industry doomed, or are we going to be able to do something relevant and interesting also in the future?
I think an interesting development what was happening in the industry over the last 2-3 years were the acquisitions of companies like Intelligentsia or Stamptown or the share at Blue Bottle, and that the moment of realization that the big players and in venture capital realize that specialty coffee is a thing and is a business that they want to be a part of. It's difficult to say like what direction this will go and how it's going to look like at these particular companies in 10 years from now, but when we talk about innovation, the reason I love being a part of coffee industry is that you have so many different people from different backgrounds that quit their jobs they were doing before, and they opened like espresso bars. They started to roast, and they used to be lawyers, people working in finance, in tech, in education, and they bring these different perspectives and these experiences to coffee, and they just mix together. They mix it up, and you have a very inspiring result from this mixture of people. And I remember I was talking with Michael Phillips, from Blue Bottle, the 2010 World Race champion, and he said that like the great thing that they're able to do at Blue Bottle these days is that they can hire people that used to work at Tesla. They have people that worked at Apple. And imagine that you're a coffee roaster and you have people that were building electric cars or developing like iOS. It brings so many different perspectives and could create things that you are not capable of even thinking of before. So yeah.
So you still see some kind of you see a future. It will get better.
Yeah, well, it needs to get better at the origin, like at first. But with the technology, with the price of smartphones, with the price of data, with the price of flights these days, where like you can get a smartphone with access to all the blogs and Instagram accounts for a few bucks, where you can get a worldwide data plan for a few dollars a month. it's a lot easier for many people around the world to have access to a lot of to a source of a lot of knowledge and information. So that will shape the development a lot of origin countries, I hope.
Yeah.
First of all, it's necessary to have the new generations of the farmers, and to convince them to stay in the coffee industry and not to quit and not to move to outside of their countries or move to capitals to work in finance. I really remember Klaus Thompson's talk at Colab in Paris some time ago.
Classic.
You were there, right?
Yeah.
And it was one of my first coffee events I've ever been to, and I still remember the thought he said that in Colombia the average age of a farmer is 56-year-old.
Yeah.
And when I've heard the number 56, for someone who's working 13, 14 hours a day with their hands, man, that's a lot.
Sure.
And the amazing thing about the industry is about the specialty coffee industry, that paying higher prices for green coffee and exchanging a lot of knowledge and information with the farmers, and making the chain much closer can often not change lives of the farmers but their grandchildren. So yeah.
How do you want Standard to be a part of a positive change in the industry? I don't want to use the phrase political. I don't like that. Should probably not be connected with coffee. That's a different podcast for a different subject.
Oh yeah.
A different time.
Oh, yeah.
But it's that. I think about that a lot with April. Whereas, I'm actually having a presentation about that tomorrow, which is not going to be tomorrow for you guys, but that doesn't matter. But
What
with the
time?
subject of I think it's 2:30.
Good to know.
Completely irrelevant for this, but
Good to know.
the title, terrible title, that I spelled incorrectly. It doesn't matter. Does the world need another coffee roastery?
Okay.
So that's the title, right? And why do I have that title? I have that title because I need to personally, for myself, justify whether my coffee roastery should exist or not.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that can be a bit. It's not an easy question to answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of justifying that it should exist, I'm not saying it should, but my answer would be, well, yes, if it creates a positive development within the industry, you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious to some extent when it comes to entrepreneurs in the coffee industry, whether they are mindful of the role the company has in the industry and whether that is important. So you just identified a challenge. One of our biggest challenges is the green coffee origin, the whole value chain, to be fair. And do you want Standard to be a part of trying to solve that problem, or is that for another company, another time?
So I have 2 points of view on this, or two takes. So the first one, we're not gonna solve anything. We're not gonna solve the supply, the problems in supply chain. That's too big of a vision for one single small company to do.
Sure.
We want to be a part of this change. We want to be an important part of this change. But what we could do as a print publication is we want to be this source of inspiration for people to be more and more interested in working in coffee, and showing them that specialty coffee is not a elitist thing to do. It's not rocket science. You can join and be a part of the community very easily, and you can contribute. You can roast. You can make coffee. You can do whatever you want. So we want to inspire more and more people to visit, to pay attention to what coffee they're buying, to pay attention and to appreciate the work of the baristas in the shops. So we wanna be the inspiration for people to join the community, and so we all can benefit, and to bring their experiences from their fields of expertise. So that's the first part of yes, we want to be a part of the change.
Sure.
And the second part is completely irrelevant to coffee industry, and that's the small business as an economic like object in a country. That I believe that like as a country or as a European Union or any kind of like geopolitical combination of subject. I believe that small, like a healthy amount of healthy small businesses is the only sustainable future for is the only sustainable way to how to achieve like prosperous future as a country, as a government or as a society. So we want to like still have the company based in the country I'm from. We want to pay the taxes. We want to employ people, and I think a combination of like 25 small businesses is much better than having a one large international corporation for like car manufacturing or smartphone production that has tax excuses from the government, that has like so many benefits from the government that it doesn't give anything back to the country. It just looks good that like Amazon is in Slovakia or like Porsche is making cars, but I like being small business, and I would love to see like more and more healthy small businesses, like for-profit companies, healthy for-profit companies, popping up and surviving and giving something back.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I totally agree with that. I think so, and I think it's important both for our industry and in the industry at large. Unfortunately, it's a negative trend with that. Whereas as most tiny companies are not very well off or prosperous in that sense, right? But it's extremely important, I think, and relevant.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up here, because we have been talking quite for a while.
Oh wow.
The next issue of Standart, where is that in the pipeline?
Yeah, very shortly, in 2 weeks from now.
Cool. What can I'm wondering if this is launched before that. Probably not. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What can we expect from the next issue?
Yeah, we'll have again like another very interesting selection of different pieces. We had a perfect interview with Fleur Stud from Mark Coffee from Australia.
Yeah.
She's one of my like most inspiring coffee people I follow online. We'll have a great feature on Athens, and I've done an interview with for the Meet Your Guest feature a few weeks back with one of the most famous type designers in the world.
Okay.
He's actually Slovakian. He lives in Netherlands.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he lives not far away from Amsterdam, and he designed the font you're using inside, like all the fonts we have.
Sure.
It's not a custom font; it would be just way too expensive. But we had he drinks a lot of coffee in his free time. But we had a good conversation about publishing magazines and how lettering and typography is important for human society.
Okay.
So it's again a mixture of things like for the coffee geeks but conversations like graphic design and typography that you would have with someone over a cup of coffee in a coffee shop. So yeah.
Cool, really cool. We're looking forward to read that. We'll most likely do that
Same
before
here.
this is launched. But thank you very much for your time. I assume it's not time to party, but something like that. It's a bunch of events. So
Yeah.
thank you. That's been great.
Yeah. Thank you too for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Of course, a pleasure.
From us here at April, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share with your friends, family, and colleagues. Thank you.